Hello, everyone. We are back for week 4 of the Built by Hand podcast. I'm Doug, and I'm here with Ryan.
Hello. What's
And
going
that's
on?
good. That's a good start.
Solid.
How's your week going?
Good. So far, so good. What am I working on? I've got one thing left for the desk install from last week. It was just for a buddy's office, that kind of like torsion box, Ron Polk style office desk that I was putting in there with the white oak veneered plywood. Just adding like a shelving unit basically to the underside of it. It was like a very quick half day throw together type thing. And then I've got a couple kind of really simple open end tables for a couch and a very slim, long sound bar shelf to make.
Nice. Is that going behind the couch?
Yeah, I think I actually didn't do the site visit. It was my buddy that I used to work with. He commissioned it off me for his client. So he just basically gave me, rough drawings and they're really, really simple. I mean, um I've got the edge banding clamped on now because I do uh often with clients I've done with in the past, what I'll do is kind of my own I mean it's not my own. It's not unique to me, but I often do thick solid wood edge banding, so I'll do a 1/4 inch thick. So I use the bandy clamps
Mm-hmm.
from like Rockler, those ones, but they're the ones that I made with the inner tubes on the I guess they're called 6-inch spring clamps. I don't know, the name kind of changes depending where you buy them.
And you find that you just get like a lot more pressure from those than like just using tape, kind of?
Yeah, like I have maybe a couple hundred of them, but they go pretty quick because, I put them down maybe every 6 inches when I'm gluing them on the edge, and that applies the clamping pressure. But because 200 really doesn't go very far for a whole job, I'll then come back with strips of tape and stretch the tape down with the clamps in place. So it's just easier. You don't have to try to use the tape as your initial clamping pressure. It's already held tight. So you basically just put a bit of tension on the tape. That like, I don't know if you've done a lot of this stuff, but there's like, it's the worst feeling in the world when you draw the tape over the top of it and you push down with it and it snaps as you're trying to apply pressure. I still do it. You smack your knuckles on the bench or whatever. It's just the fucking worst. It's just,
How do
but
you how do you create the actual strips? Like, are you just planing those down? Are you just table sawing those and then planing them down, or how are you actually creating the solid wood strips?
yeah, I'll take 4/4. In this case, it's white oak. I'll skip plane it to, I'll measure the plywood. Like the plywood I'm working with this time is at 0.7 inch. So I'll plane it down to like, a true through 3/4 or 0.76, I think is what I did this time. I've got the little dial indicator on my planer, so it does a pretty decent job of getting it to where I want it without having to like go back with the calipers. And then once it's done skip planing, I'll just joint one edge and then I'll start ripping off strips at 5/16 on the bandsaw. And I'll go back to the joiner if the wedge gets a little wonky as I go. And then once I have all those kind of rough sawn 5/16 inch strips, then I'll go back to the planer and then plane them down to a clean 1/4 inch.
And is your bandsaw dialed in? Ours is, we don't use it for anything other than like rough cuts. We can't get a straight cut out of it.
It is right now. It's usually pretty good. Yeah, I've got the Laguna 14 EX, I think it's called. It's pretty common. It's out there in a lot of places, I think. It's got like the ceramic guides on it. It does well enough. I do very little resawing for like veneer and things like that. Like I've only done that maybe a couple of times anyway. So for my purposes, it really does kind of do good enough job. For this, when it does matter, because like the reason you would do it on the bandsaw, besides the fact that it's just taking it to the table saw, you just like destroy your blade anyway, cutting off these many strips, but you lose all that material obviously from the blade kerf. This one, I actually just bought a new blade though from Lee Valley, and it's cutting a lot better than the Laguna brand bandsaw blades I was buying before. It has a bit of a shallower gullet on the teeth, but I think it's still about either a 3 or 6 TPI 1/2 inch blade. And I just use it for this project. I just put it on brand new, and it's cutting really nicely. And I bought two from Lee Valley. They've got a more expensive one and a cheaper one. And since I'd never used both, I bought one of each. And I'm pretty sure it's the cheap one that I put on this time. I just couldn't remember because then I stored them for like a month, and now I go back to pull them out. I was like, which one was this actually more expensive? I don't know. Anyway, it's actually cutting really nice. Yeah. So it is, as long as, I'm using the full length of the fence on it, referencing the edge of the board as I'm pushing it through the bandsaw. So if your board does start to get wonky, it immediately translates in your cut, as opposed to like if you've ever seen those kind of fences where it's just like a triangle pointing at your blade, right? So it keeps it at the same distance from the blade, but it's up to you to keep the board straight for when you're trying to hit a line.
Yeah, I actually just did resawing for the first time because we're making those kind of promo boxes that we're giving out.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it was my first time resawing, and actually it went pretty well. And it's in the past, I've just planed it down and kind of accepted the waste. But now it was like this one board is easily two for what we need, right? Because we were like quarter inch max we were needing, and we were working with 4/4 1 inch boards, right?
Yeah, so you were resawing too as panels, right? Not even or not for veneer. And I guess what I'm
No, it
driving,
was
how did you find the cupping? Like, did they come apart like that?
honestly, it was very minimal. And then we were using like a square insert piece in the bottom, so it was very easy to just put a little glue there and kind of clamp it. But the cupping was very minimal. I was actually pretty surprised.
Those
But
were my,
these have also boards that have been in our shop for like 6 months, so they've moved a good portion of what they were going to move. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Then the corners on that are mitered.
yeah,
Sweet.
yeah, mitered, and then we're going to do splines, walnut splines in them. But we think that we might not be able to do it for the first one that we made because we made them too thin, and we're just worried that if we spline it, it's just going to be too small, and it's going to kind of just look like a imperfection rather than a feature. So yeah, we might actually the first one might just be solid white oak on the corners,
Yeah,
but
your
the next
wall
one's
thickness is thin enough that it would be very narrow or whatever, like a quarter inch or whatever.
like even like less. Yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So visually, there'd be no real point to it. But yeah, for our next ones, we're gonna do them a bit thicker for the boxes so we can get a decent thickness of the spline.
What about you? What do you got on the bench?
So nothing on the bench. I got a couple things in the invoices. I'm just waiting for final approval. The job that we just finished last week, they've now come back and said, "Oh, we'd like a cabinet, 6 inch by 46 inch cabinet, kind of open shelving except for one pull-out shelf." So they're going to approve that today. And then I have a coffee table that still needs to be done as like the last piece for that order. It's going to be a coffee table that goes into uh, a mock unit in a sales center. So it's kind of just like basically like a fake apartment coffee table.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great commission. It's a good client.
Yeah. No, this client's been great. This is the goal now is to find out, get more of them as we kind of build our book and figure out what our offering is. And this week has kind of been like a lot of kind of like taking the time now that we have a little bit of time to breathe and really think about what does our business want to be for the next 2 years and kind of like targeting all of our goals and focusing on making that happen.
How are you distilling down what you want to do? What's your process?
Research, honestly, like looking at like what niches there are. Obviously, it's like woodworking, which is already a niche, custom woodworking, and another niche within that. And then obviously, like sales wise and marketing wise, there's a bunch of different niches of how you want to speak and how you want to talk to future clients and how you want to go after them. So I think that we have a pretty good path that we're hoping to do now, just basically through our experiences and just conversations and projects that we've done to this date. We think we want to target, we want to go, we want to productize, but we want to productize to B2B. So we don't want to do, or we at least want to not completely focus on D2C, like one-off purchases from various consumers, but we want to focus on larger development projects, whether it's restaurants, bars, sales centers, anything that will have like an interior design team attached to it that's kind of in charge of sourcing all
Or
of the
is this
products.
particular to your retail product offering or your customer both?
So both. So we want to combine the two. It basically wants to be an offering, let's say that, where we have a product line that they can pick standard sizes from, standard designs, and then fill out part of the orders that they have to source. But then we also want them to know that we have the custom side. So if they need, say they need 10 pieces for a new restaurant or a sales center that need to be custom and fit in certain areas and need to be within a couple inches of whatever they need, then we have that offering. But then we also realized that while we were doing those custom offers and doing our deliveries, that they were getting a lot of products from overseas to kind of fill out the rest of the place. So we want to figure out a way to be able to offer the custom, but then also capitalize on the relationship and hopefully sell some of our products and product designs through the product side of things. So basically we sell them, they can pick from the catalog once they figure out or get all the things that they need from the catalog, then they can start the custom conversation to kind of fill it all out.
Right.
And that's kind of
It sounds like, does that mean that you're focusing really on economies of scale then in order to, like, if you need to make, or if you're trying to sell, say, to a restaurant You'd need to obviously be doing, maybe a few dozen of each for sale. Like, sorry, I'm thinking in my head, is it tables, chairs, both? Or actually maybe like, what do you think? What do you think of those products might be?
Yeah, so it will run the gamut. Tables, chairs, coffee tables. Basically, it will by all means look like a D2C retail e-commerce furniture brand in terms of the product, but the back end things of like having people in our trade program and basically having a trade representative that represents us and works as like an accounts person with the different B2B clients, we'll be able to offer both a product line and custom. So yeah, it's basically trying to show the value of kind of working with one vendor for a big bulk of the orders and kind of showcasing like how much kind of weight that takes off their shoulders. So they're not working with a ton of different vendors. They're also working with, this is all hyper local. So they're not working with overseas vendors, whether it's in the UK or other areas that they would usually source from. It's less likely that delivery times are skewed. We can give more accurate delivery times, and then it's kind of a more personal connection because we are local and we are kind of still at the same events that they are and still able to respond respond to emails in the same time zone and all those different factors that go into it.
This is kind of informing your marketing plan then too, right? Where, for me, where e-commerce is going to be where I'm going to be making, my nut on the business for the retail side, selling to individuals. If you, it does it, or it seems like maybe your strategy then would, of course, be more like personal relationships. So, working with people who know other people or are in the industry already. So your marketing efforts would be much more targeted to specifically those areas as opposed to trying to like do broad reach through. Well, I don't know. You tell me, but would you still plan to invest as much in social media, meta ads, or any of those other things, or rely more on kind of like you're doing with your boxes, which is awesome, and taking it directly to someone who makes the decisions about purchasing?
Yeah, so we're definitely like meta ads and those kind of services are definitely going to be a big part of the plan, but they're going to be very targeted toward the basically the benefits of working with a local provider. And they're not going to be kind of like beauty shots of individual products. It's going to be more about what you kind of get from working with us locally, right? Rather than having to go overseas. And yeah, so it'll be very hyper focused on that. They basically taking as much things that like maybe aren't understood or are issues for them and kind of solving as many of those as possible and then using those solves as the ads and kind of showcasing what those solves can be and through case studies and different marketing efforts.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, like we talked about before, the marketing's like the hardest part of everything for us. Anyway, I feel like for myself, for sure, if you still agree on that or not.
Agreed. And I think that this path now that we're hoping to take and really focus on is the right path for us, considering the type of content that we want to make, the kind of content, the type of content that we have time to make. And it really leans into the kind of hit the grounds, like because we're local, we can be going into the shops, we can be talking face to face, that kind of sales process. And I think that focusing on that for the next year and kind of building that business up to a sustainable growth and level, and then we can start looking at what things we can take from that and move into D2C e-commerce sales and hopefully have a war chest to actually start putting enough money into advertising to start the direct to consumer sales.
Right. So you're looking at, for when you're saying the B2B, looking at kind of the top of the funnel, or I don't know what the right phrasing would be for that or description of it, but going to the designers, the purchasers, that kind of thing that work with many, say, restaurants or whatever business offices, et cetera, kind of.
Yeah, I find it's always the like internal interior design teams that are the decision makers. It seems to be that they're kind of the we need this. Okay, quote works. Okay, let's go. So yeah, it only makes sense to go and kind of cater to those people, make sure that our offering is something that's kind of undeniable and just yeah, once we get the marketing assets in place, then it's just about outreach.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. I've tried in the past to get the attention of interior designers and different design houses. There's a couple in town actually that specialize in the really good restaurants here in town that have designed them. To no luck though, I didn't press the issue aside from just sending some emails. It's hard to really grab someone through just an email when they get, plenty into their inbox and maybe they're not necessarily in the market right now for somebody, so they're not going to catalog put that away in their memory necessarily. Is there any thought, or what have you gotten to the point yet where you think, how would you, are you thinking in person, like maybe try and show up at where these people work?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. They kind of all fill into each other. I would say that cold email is probably at the bottom of the list because it's like, unfortunately, sometimes Google just decides your emails are spam, and like 50% of your emails they might not ever even see or even had a chance to see. Also, they're very busy, and like if they're putting out a ton of fires at their work, like looking at a new email of a supplier that they don't like currently need for a project isn't at the top of their list to kind of review and go through. You kind of have to, with an email, cold email, you kind of have to catch them in like a spot where a contractor or a provider just fell out and they're like desperately looking for someone to fill the space. And then it would be like kind of perfect timing in a way. But I don't think it's a sustainable thing to target that way. So I'm a big believer in like hitting the ground, go like obviously respectfully, like kind of just going to events, going to offices, and obviously with marketing assets, catalog or whatever. But sometimes it's enough to just go in and kind of just ask if there's time for a meeting. The face to face will, especially for a hyper localized plan, you can't beat that.
I think too, your idea where you're, again, if I'm assuming right, like this is where you'd be bringing your boxes to, right?
And so the box, because it is an investment on our part, like we're literally building kind of heirloom boxes that we're giving out, and we want to make sure that they're not just kind of going to the wrong people or getting stuck at reception or those kind of things. So I'm going to do a LinkedIn plan, and also just an Instagram. We've kind of brought in a bunch of qualified leads through our Instagram, just in terms of people that follow us. So DMing those people that we've already started conversations with, because anytime that anyone follows us, every like 2 weeks or so, we do like a blitz message being like, oh, thanks for following us. We'd love to go. We're local Vancouver. We'd love to go grab a coffee. Like a lot of people are like, oh, that's awesome. We love your work. We like maybe like next month or like maybe after New Year or whenever you're sending the messages.
With the people in industry, not just.
Yeah, and our Instagram is we're kind of lucky in that way because of the type of content that we put out, that those are mostly the people that we get, is industry relevant people, because those are the people that kind of care about what we're doing. So we have a ton. We have like a small email list as well, that guarantees that your emails go through. But I find, yeah, Instagram DMs, because if you're DMing on Instagram, it's so close to things that can qualify you, right? Like they can go and look at your Instagram and see, oh, you're a real company, you are working for people, your work is in restaurants, is in coffee shops and all that stuff already. So it's kind of that trust factor. So they're a lot more willing to talk to you or to entertain a conversation with you with those kind of qualifying things so close to the message. Whereas like an email, it's going to take them like 5 or 6 clicks to kind of figure out who you are. Whereas an Instagram, they just go press one click and they're scrolling a lot of stuff that you do. So that's why I think Instagram and that kind of marketing is super important for us.
You mentioned LinkedIn too. Have you
Yeah.
explored LinkedIn much?
Yeah, I find a lot of interior design studios are on LinkedIn. So I have done reach outs. Basically, it's I've done this for the production company as well, and it does work really well. But it's basically you just wake up every morning from whatever 9 to 10, you send 50 messages, you try to curate them. Like it's really bad to kind of copy and paste a message. So I try to like write each message that I send that's relevant to the person that I'm sending it to, and whether I'm kind of doing it, whether I know something about their company already.
Such and such, or to that kind of effect.
And as much as possible, like I'm a big kind of research guy. So I do deep dive a lot of companies. So if I reach out to someone on LinkedIn, I kind of know a lot more about them than I'd like to give on. Like I've kind of deep dove their entire company and kind of what they do and where we can fit in. So when those first kind of conversations start, it's always good to talk about what they're up to. And I kind of already have a 100-yard view of what they're doing already.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I feel like LinkedIn is one of those resources that I hear about, not often, but well, not often in so much as that I hear it only from people who are in business. So it's not really like it's out there for people who aren't trying to do, this kind of B2B business and making connections and things like that. But that's definitely a huge gap in my visibility is LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah. No, it's honestly, it's a great service, and you pay for premium. You can send as many messages as you want. And yeah, it's about really making those messages catered to the person you're talking to, increases the read rate by like 80%.
And
If
so
it's
they give you read receipts?
Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
what has your, have you made money off of those yet? Are you have continued conversations with people?
So I haven't started it as much for woodworking, but production, yeah, I'd say a good 30% of our business came from direct LinkedIn messages. And then obviously keeping your LinkedIn page relevant with like recent awards or recent projects that you've completed and gives you more credibility as well. It's kind of that reach out and then kind of having your qualifications readily available where you don't have to send them, where they in just a quick or two they can kind of see who you are, because that's what everyone's doing. They're qualifying whether it's worth it for them to give you time, right?
So it's a portfolio, LinkedIn.
Yeah, 100%. It is. It's basically like you have a wall. It's like a Facebook kind of. It's like a business Facebook in a way. So you have a wall where you can post, but then you can also post like skills that you have, and people can like vote them or like approve them, like things like that. But on it, like I just use it for the wall, posting projects, awards, those kind of things. And then it does show like where you were before. Like it shows all your careers and kind of like your whole trajectory of what got you to where you are.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get on that.
But if I can stress enough, it's build an Instagram that has the people. Even at, like we only have like I don't know 2,000 and change or something followers, but I know that they're all somewhat qualified. They're people that we want to talk to, whether it's a direct job or not. The awareness that we get from our followers is very high value just because of where we kind of got them from. And obviously posts, but then also like doing trade shows like the interior design show, as I know you did for a couple of years before. And we've done the last 2 years. Those kind of events are great for getting people on your Instagram that are interested in following your journey.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like I had mixed feelings about my IDS adventure, like I've talked to you about before. But I think a lot of that is my fault in overspending, certainly on our booth. I always look back and I was like, that was the most expensive 120 followers I've ever had to get, basically. Um, and they're not. There was an incentive, and I forget what it was. I think we were doing giveaways at the time. Yeah, that's what we did. We did a giveaway, so it was incentive for follows and stuff like that. Anyway, there's many reasons why I didn't make much hay out of that opportunity. Certainly a learning, something to learn from for sure. But yeah, I didn't have as much. But I mean, you have. You said you've had some valuable interactions at those shows.
Yeah, it's kind of we really are big on just like combining all these interactions, all these meetings, all these coffee dates, like just all these like different being out in the community aspects, whether it's through partnerships, whether it's through collaborations, whether it's through just going to events. It's been great for us. And I can't track a dollar to it, but it's more about like how many people know of your brand when you're meeting at new events. Like, are people like, oh, I've heard of you, and all those kind of things. And it's just like percolating kind of just a general brand awareness within an industry that is decently not that big in Vancouver. Like it's kind of pretty simple to meet all of the main people if you just put yourself out there.
It's amazing what hearing someone else you already know say, "Oh yeah, I've heard of them," does to your perception of a brand. Like they don't even have to really know anything about you, but like I've heard about them and
Mhm.
therefore they must be a thing.
Yeah.
You immediately get some kind of credibility out of just name recognized by somebody else.
That's all it is gaining credibility and then holding on to it and hopefully building and increasing it to where more people think that you're credible and just always doing a good job is that I can't see how that would fail.
Mhm.
And pricing correctly.
Yeah, praising correctly. Yeah, and all the other 6 dozen things that are hypercritical and
If you're not pricing correctly though, and you have all that awareness and that all benefits you, you will fail.
yeah, you're not pricing correctly, or you're not, I mean, yeah, there's many different areas where you can kind of stumble and fall. And, like when you're breaking into new industries, understanding how much you can expect they would have in their budget or not expect to have in their budget, but, talking about them with their budget, for what they're doing, you have an expectation of what's possible, where you can make your margins on these jobs and things like that. I've had not so much in the furniture aspect of the restaurant businesses, but in doing like serviceware because I do, there's other parts of the business where I'll do like, metal milling, HDPE plastic cutting for kitchen tools and the mold making and castings. And some things like, the restaurants are really rough on the stuff that you have, on the stuff that you make. They go through dishwashers They're handled by a lot of people. They drop, that kind of thing. So they have to be really robust. Choosing the materials outside of furniture, I mean, particularly things that people can actually carry or that you have to be very in the know about what kind of material is going to last, what kind of finishes are going to last, or how long they can expect the service life of certain things before you just have to toss them out, which is true of anything in a commercial restaurant.
So I actually have a question for you based on that. And because we, through our own experiences, we're doing restaurants and coffee shops and stuff like that. And it's a completely different use case. It's going to have the same amount of use in a coffee shop, like in like 2 days, that your house table might get in a year. So it's the difference in like finishing and all that you have to do for that is pretty insane. So I wanted to kind of get, how do you kind of attack that, and are there any kind of things that you do to make sure that your commercial projects are like ready for that kind of abuse?
Yeah, I think I've for things like banquettes or chairs, things you sit in, if we're talking about unupholstered stuff, we're just worried about, the finish we're putting on the wood. I've had great luck with the hard wax oils. The great thing about them is that they do stand up really well to light abrasion and things like that. And things that they don't, or people think of polyurethane, having that kind of thick plastic coating, like that'll really protect it, but the thing you're really worried about is how it looks, not whether or not the thing's going to fall apart. And polyurethane will show scratches and scrapes and as much as anything else, but the difference comes to when you have to refinish it, how much more of a pain in the butt it is to strip it all back, and then how much more of a pain in the butt it is in order to reapply that finish. And pain in the butt translates to time and money. So that's what I mean when I say that. The hard wax oils, a quick sand and a reapplication, and you're good to go. And I think, if you're going to consider maybe burning through your veneer, if it's a plywood product or something that over subsequent sandings, that's true. And that's just the service life of any furniture made of plywood. But if you're talking about solid wood, you can sand, for the rest of your life and it won't matter. And it happens really quickly. And those hard wax oils, you can have different activators in them so they cure really quickly. So I'm a big fan of those for things where you're sitting or if it's on your walls. When it comes to tabletops, though, it can be a bit of a mixed bag because really polyurethane does do a very good job with preventing stains in comparison to hard wax oils. But that being said, I would still, for any tabletops in any commercial setting, glass or stone. But and from having worked in that industry for a while, those are the only two things that are going to really stand up because everything else is going to show scrapes and scratches. So even if you polyurethane a top and you're going to do a clear coat over, like a nice wood, like a white oak or something like that, or walnut, you're going to see all those scrapes and scratches like toot sweet. It happens immediately. So there may be other finishes out there that I'm not aware of. There's that I sent it to you. I haven't used it myself. The nano something.
The purple light one?
I'm not sure what the brand name was, but it's kind of that nano cloth
Coating.
coating or something
Yeah.
you put on your hard wax oil. I'd be interested to see how that holds up on tabletops because again, I'm a huge fan of using those for wooden surfaces. Where I've polyurethane restaurant tables before, and it's the same thing. They get scraped and scratched up, and you do have to refinish them over time.
Is there a brand that you go to for is it Osmo for the?
I have used Osmo and Rubio. Those are the two that I've used.
I find Rubio's a lot harder to find.
In Canada, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's really only one supplier that I use. I think it's Ardec, which I think is based out of Quebec, I think.
And then you can, it's not a supplier, but you can buy it from that place on Clark Street, BC Woodworks.
I haven't.
But it's very like you're buying like their leftover. It's very, it's like sometimes
Okay.
you get like half a bottle. It's like,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I haven't done it. I mean, Rubio's more expensive as well, generally, but the
Love that
curing
smell though.
faster with its two-part. To be honest, I don't have enough side by side to say which one's better. I hear anecdotal people saying like, "Oh, Osmo's not as durable as it used to be." Like, I haven't run any issues yet. I still use it all the time. That nano crystalline finish or whatever the heck it's called. I wish I could come up with the real name of it, but that there's a Canadian company, Black Forest Woodworks. I think that's the website I sent to you to that time. I think they're based in Alberta. Yeah, they've got, yeah, they're a big operation. They do a lot of very impressive, very expensive stuff. What they post mostly is their, epoxy tables and stuff
So
like
they're from Calgary.
that. Calgary. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I actually talked to them a long time ago, like even before I was in like woodworking, because as at the production company, we're kind of just doing this off the cuff series based on makers.
Mhm.
So we did like artists, and we just did these little featurettes on that. And I had actually reached out to them to see if they wanted to fly us out to kind of make a series on them, because I had been following their YouTube, and it's a father son, right? And the son's kind of taking the company into the new social media era.
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah.
They've got, I mean, it looks like they have at least a dozen guys in that shop. Big, expensive equipment, way out of our league of the types of things we're making. But I mean, when you're making, I'm sure they're making what seems like the majority of the business from making those very expensive tables, right? So very large ones too.
And so this is maybe where my knowledge hasn't developed as much, but we've been working with 100% solid hardwood because as 2 years ago or whatever, as a beginner, it was much easier to work with. We didn't have to like do any edge banding. We didn't have to like work with thin veneers and all that. So I'm just wondering, do you have any like preference for if you're making tables or any certain pieces of furniture where you're saying, it's not just about whether it's a better wood or not. Plywood or veneered products is actually a better product for this type of furniture.
That's a good question. Like, where would I say it's actually a better option to do so? I mean, if price is no object, it would have to be kind of with that kind of caveat. Because, like we talked before, doing casework with solid wood is just more complex. And there's a lot more time that goes into making a solid wood panel than it is to plywood and edge band for whatever, no matter what edge band treatment, even the more laborious time consuming one that I tend to do is still much faster, obviously, than milling and gluing up a flat panel and all the aesthetic work that goes into that. Um, but where would I suggest to use one over the other? I don't know if there's anything that really comes to mind. I don't know actually where I would choose one than the other because if it was something to do with structure in terms of plywood, like a floating shelf or something like that, you'd have to add similar provisions for solid wood anyway. Like there's certain scenarios where, solid wood is a lot heavier. So if you're making a plywood shelf, or sorry, you're making a floating shelf and the solid wood's going to be a lot heavier, you'd have to really think about how you're going to lighten the load on that shelf or how you're going to end up attaching your brackets in order to support that shelf well enough. Those are definitely considerations, and that can vary wildly with solid wood. If someone wants a hard maple floating shelf, you can get something that looks exactly like solid wood, especially if it's scribed on either end. It's like inset into an alcove or something. It can look exactly like hard maple depending on how you build it, or if you were to do hard maple and for whatever reason you chose to make it completely out of solid hard maple, then you do some kind of a mitered box or something so that you're removing a bunch of volume from the middle, depending on how destructive you want to be to hang that shelf. If you got to cut open the plywood or cut open the wall, and find a stud so you can tie in an L bracket or something in order to support it, or you can't support it on three ends, you can only support it, at the back wall, all those considerations. Yeah, I would say usually it probably would just come down to weight more than anything else. Solid wood's a lot heavier in a lot of cases, especially now because, you don't see a lot of Russian birch and Baltic birch around because of the war. Those plywoods tend to be the heaviest. They're also the best, the most actually stable. They had a lot of glue in them. They're quite dense. Where now, when I'm working with the veneered products, whether it be um, maple, white oak, or walnut, those cores seem to be like an SPF or a poplar. They're a very soft wood. They can barely hold a screw, but they're very light. Yeah, there's painting, obviously. Obviously, that's a completely different scenario. You wouldn't be painting solid wood anymore or bothering to use wood veneered unless it's maple. Actually, you would use maple veneered ply to cut down on weight if you plan to paint it versus using an MDF.
And what I've been seeing, and one of the reasons I asked the question is what I've been seeing from overseas a lot is even high end, like expensive premium products that are coming from overseas, they're still using like veneered and plywood like tops. And I'm wondering if that's because coming from like Indonesia or some places like that, that the humidity change and the shipping, like it'd be impossible to kind of send over completed furniture because just the humidity change from place to place, you'd have so much cracking and displacement and wood movement that the pieces would never show up the same as how you sent them. So I was thinking that was a major, because we're trying to think of like why we're a better offering than getting from overseas. And I think that that's one of the reasons is that we can use solid hardwood for most of our products, almost all of them. Whereas if you're getting it from overseas, you're limited on a lot of things to those humidity shifts.
Yeah, I mean, think, in terms of overseas products, why they'd be using one thing over another. I mean, first of all, if it's coming from overseas, their business model may just be volume, in which case they can't hire enough skilled labor or make sense of the cents and dollars to work with solid wood, especially because a lot of the hardwoods that we think of are either North America or Europe anyway. So they have to bring all of that there and do all of that processing. There's a lot more skill, obviously, that goes into making a solid panel. And like I said before, a lot of that is aesthetic, understanding how you're cutting and milling the boards, how you're going to rotate them, how you're working with the gradient of color and all of that kind of thing. In all over Asia, you can buy the best things that are made in the world if you're willing to pay for them. Uh, I mean, all of China makes, all the iPhones, all the Apple products, which are arguably the best made electronic devices in the modern world. I think that goes for a lot of things. Yeah, I don't know exactly why you can't find a lot of solid, but actually, I wonder, what are some of where is some of that furniture coming from? Like, what is that Sunday company? Is that made local? You told me this once or not?
Yeah, so no, well, we'll have to cut this out because I don't want to. I don't want them to see this.
Oh, what's that? You don't know? Well, just leave
No,
it.
I do. I do know. I know everything, every single thing about Sundays. I just don't want to put it in the podcast because it's like I've basically learned their entire supply chain.
Oh, okay. But did they make their solid wood furniture overseas?
Yeah, they have like a couple suppliers. Indonesia is a big one,
Mhm.
and then they have a couple in Europe. Their couches come from China. But yeah,
Like
it's
solid wood furniture, like the solid wood
it's
furniture
solid
company?
wood, but what they do actually, I can just jump back in here without talking about Sundays. Yeah, one of the other things that I thought was interesting is some of the products from overseas. When you're talking about that, like gluing up a panel and matching the color and thinking about the gradients and how the end product looks, I find that a lot of products from overseas come, and it was very interesting because I always wondered why they work with such thin strips of wood. Like on average, our planks that we'll use in our glue ups are 5 inches to 6 inches, just because we want to really kind of let those cathedrals breathe on like the flat sawn wood and kind of really kind of let the pattern not be abrupted quickly over and over again. But I find that a lot of the solid wood stuff from overseas comes with very like 2 inch panels, 2 inch strips that they use to glue up their panels. And I was assuming that that was to reduce on wood movement with the humidity changes, obviously by being shipped over here, but also for color toning. I thought that they don't have to think as much about like matching gradients and matching different pieces to other ones can like because white oak and walnut and each different board can vary very greatly in color. So I think if you have thinner strips and you're kind of just placing them all together because it's just kind of color tone everywhere, your eyes almost don't even like catch it. So it kind of seems like it's more consistent just because the strips are more
Yeah, I don't
varied.
know though.
Pardon?
Like, are these, inch and a half thick tops? Like when we're talking about strips, we mean they're basically square almost. They're inch and a half by inch and a half, or two inch by inch and a
Most of
half.
them, most of them are like under 1 inch by like 2 inch strips
Inch
for
by
like
two.
a coffee table.
So do you think maybe they're actually just cutting away certain parts of the board that would be a nuisance anyway? Like if it had a knot or something like that.
No, because they still come with knots. Like they still
Oh
come
yeah.
with epoxy filled knots, same way that we deal with knots. But it's almost like a pixel, right? Like it's like we're looking at a million pixels right now, but you can't see the difference because they're so small. So if you make the boards smaller and then you have more of them, it kind of like does that kind of that play on your eyes where you can't see the differences as much because there's so much smaller.
I don't know actually. I think like I would say because when I do my backboard glue ups, if I have a 2 inch strip, if I have more strips in it, it tends to be more difficult to have to obscure any color changes. Like I can only find a few boards that are of the same tone from every angle that it looks like one nice cohesive gradient. I'm wondering more so if you're actually probably closer on the other tip where it comes to stability and honestly just ease of production, where they're taking the boards and they're feeding it into a machine that automatically rips every board that feeds into it. It rips it, planes it, and joints it into 2 inch by whatever thickness they're doing for every single strip. They look at every strip. The ones that aren't good, they throw away. The ones that are good, they keep, and then they just sort it like that. I think that unless or the material they're sourcing because it's all, I don't know. there's more offcuts or more variety or whatever, it's just easier for them to do that. Because you can imagine all the time we spend looking at different widths of boards, and I'm buying an economical amount of lumber in order to make my tabletop. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to cut away this much material there. I'm going to try and leave this board this wide, but I also want to make sure that I don't have 2-inch boards and 7-inch boards in this glue up. I want them to all be relatively consistent widths. Um, I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah, I don't have the answer, but yeah, there's obviously some kind of pragmatic reason why it looks like that butcher block style.
yeah, yeah. And actually, I started noticing too is that some of them are actually not even over a five foot span. Like say it's a credenza or something like that. The boards aren't even full width. Like it's literally like that ends and then another one starts. So it is like the kind of acacia or the butcher block like style. So that was something that I noticed. Very interesting about how different providers kind of make those glue up panels. And it's probably just the machines that they use, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it has to do with something with economy of material and economy of process. I imagine it's got to be something like that because they're not going to be using, they're using the really large presses as well, where there's like rolling on glue on one face, flipping them all over 90 degrees, and then stacking them in something that presses them flat and, clamps them together. And then the whole wheel, like a wheel on, what are those boats, that go down in the water,
Yeah, yeah. Not a tugboat.
boats or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying.
Bad description, but you get it. All right, well, we're coming up close to an hour. Do we want to do our reverse rosebud thorn? All right, so what do you got? What's the thorn?
Thorn. Thorn's probably the hardest to think of.
Wow, what a positive guy. Which
Here, if you got one, you can go first. I'm trying to think because
yeah.
I haven't been out of the house that much this week because I've just been locked in on our website. But yeah, not much is.
Here's a lesson I just learned the hard way was I shipped something down to the US a couple months ago, maybe it was a month ago. Anyway, it went to New York. It got accepted. Everything's cool from UPS. And then I just got an email today that the person that I shipped the item to didn't pay the duties on it. So that where you get to sign it, get your package, and then they ask you for the duties after. And so their policy actually is that if the recipient doesn't pay that within 30 days or 45 days, I have to pay it.
Yeah,
So I just, that was a thing, right?
I didn't know that was the thing either.
So that's really annoying. So that's about 100 Canadian dollars that I'm going to have to pay out.
Just because the person's not responding to you.
I'm just not going to reach out to them. They're a customer for whatever reason, they're not paying it. I don't want to go through, and they're a business, or a business that I might want to work with in the future. Although it doesn't seem like they're going to go ahead with this project. I'd rather eat the $100 now without um, possibly having a negative interaction. So I'm just gonna do that. But that's annoying. That sucks. I mean, I'd have to look into it, but I hope that there's some way when I'm shipping to them, because it was understood they'd be paying the duties and taxes for whatever their border services chooses to charge, that UPS collects payment before they make delivery. Because I would prefer that, because then that puts the onus on them immediately to pay for it to get the shipment that they want, as opposed to turning around and then making it my problem 2 months later. And now all of a sudden, I should have charged $100 more for the product basically. But so much things are trading with the different codes and what they're tariffing and stuff like that. I'll have to look at the paperwork and see what they charge for, and I guess just plan for it in the future and just charge a little extra up front. I don't know what to do. Anyway, so that's definitely my thorn. That's definitely a thorn in my ass. Bud, what am I looking forward to? Like we were talking a little bit about you're trying to plan for the next 2 years how you're going to market and orient or reorient the business or whatever. I am, like I talked before, I am I'm changing a bit of the direction on my retail offering. So I'm going to reorient what I'm going to be offering and how I'm going to be marketing, anything like that. And what I've been doing is using ChatGPT to just go through the broad strokes of kind of a business plan effectively, which are honestly completely useless unless a bank asks you to make a business plan for a loan, which
Yeah,
they
yeah,
force you to do.
yeah.
But for this, it's more about me just getting all my thoughts on paper, and it recording it and being able to revisit all of those things in the future. And I just got to the marketing portion of it where we're starting to figure out. And ChatGPT will help you source, because this is part of my marketing plan, source influencers and content creators in the niche within which you plan to sell.
Really?
I've done a lot of that myself, and competitors, finding like competitors. Again, I already did all this research, so I knew who they were. It was refreshing enough. It was nice that it came up with though the same ones that I had already found. So I knew it was doing a good job if I assumed that I had done a good job previously. So it has more capabilities than even I would have thought of going through this process with it. So anyway, I guess the bud there is I'm just looking forward to see what comes out of that whole process. It's exciting.
It's exciting.
And what would a rose be? What is good that is going on? What is good in my life? I feel like this is always going to be the hardest one. I mean, um, oh, I don't know. I've got a couple leads on a couple clients, I guess, for jobs. I'll just leave it at that. That's usually something that really keeps me positive, is knowing that there's more work
Where'd you get
coming
the
up.
leads from?
Through a friend for a business, and another friend put me in touch with someone who's looking to start another business, and they would like some design work. I think I touched on that person maybe last week. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not. Anyway, there's that lead, and another person who had a potential large commission for the house last fall has actually come back around and said that they might go ahead. So none of it's confirmed, but it's all, they're leads, and leads are exciting.
Is what you need.
What you got?